welcome back to the studio. I don't know how many of you are part of a local quilting guild, but what I wanted to show you today was something that I learned at one of my local quilting guilds. I actually am a member of 3, but I only routinely go to one of them, and that's mostly because of distance and when the meetings are. But one of our recent meetings, they had different members come in and just show some new neat trick or tip. And this particular item was a recycle item, which recycling is kind of a good thing. I recycle myself here at the house all the time, but I also like to reuse, repurpose, and so this falls into that category. It's certainly not a quilty thing, but there is sewing involved. And so I just thought it would be a fun palette cleanser from some of the stuff I normally do. And it will be quick, and people who probably live in a more rural environment might get more use out of this than some of the more urban people. But I still think it's a really, really cool thing. And so that's upcycling a feed sack. Now the old feed sacks, they used to make out of cotton, and they would put printed fabric as the use of the bag, and that's how the manufacturers got people to buy their feed, because the women would repurpose the sack itself as their clothing. They would just take the seams out, and then they would get yardage, and they would make their children's clothes or quilting out of it. So repurposing feed sack kind of has a history with quilters, so I like it for that reason also. Now these feed sacks are not cloth. They're not even paper. It's kind of like a plastic material, and so it's very heavy duty, and that's part of why these work so well. And it's a great use for them rather than just putting them in the landfill. So all that they've done, they've taken the top seam off as you would to get access to this grain, but they also removed the stitching on the bottom. And so now basically what you have is a tube. And these have been washed very thoroughly, so that's a good thing. But the process is going to be very easy. So these are obviously going to come in different sizes. So I'm not going to give you the exact measurement of the bag itself, because that really isn't that critical. But approximately 28 or 29 inches. Now if it was a much shorter bag, it would just make a shorter finished bag in the end. But still could be usable. The process is, after you have the bag open into a tube like this and washed, what you would do is take your rotary cutter and ruler, and you would measure off approximately 4 or 5 inches across from the bottom of the bag up. Now this one is kind of a little cattywampus, so the first thing I would do is straighten that cut out, get rid of the scrap, and then cut off about 4 or 5 inches. Once you cut off that 4 or 5 inches from the bottom of the bag, you would have a piece that looked like this. Now with that, all you're going to do is cut that on the 2 ends so that you have 2 strips. These are going to be approximately 4 or 5 inches high by the width of the bag. Now these are going to be our handles. So basically what you would do is fold the plastic in towards the center, however wide you made it, and then fold it half again. And what we would do is just top stitch this seam together, and that's going to make our handle. So I will bring the camera in a little bit closer and show you what that looks like folded. When we cut our band off, I'm just showing you again up close. This is a 4 or 5 inch band off of the bottom of the feed sack bag. We would also just cut the 2 very edges, front and back, so we have 2 strips. And from each strip, you would just fold the fabric in half, and this is just making a stronger handle, and then fold it in half again, and then you could top stitch that right down this seam, maybe 1/8 of an inch or 1/4 of an inch away from the edge. And then these 2 edges would get attached to the bag itself when we're finished. So you would repeat that process on both handles and sew those together. I'll just top stitch it there on the edge, and I'll show you what that looks like. Now, pinning this is not really going to work, and I don't even think a glue stick would work very good on this, but you could certainly try a glue stick. But what worked pretty good are these clips, binding clips. You could also use paper clips, or the old laundry clips. Gosh, I forget what they call those right now. Laundry pins. So we will just take this, and I'm just going to line up the edge of this with the machine. Even if it's a 1/4 of an inch in or an 1/8 of an inch, that'll still be good to top stitch that seam closed. I will tell you that I would use a 90 needle or a 100 needle, and also I would consider this needle to be used after you're finished making the bag or bags, because it's going to dull the needle. We are sewing through plastic. So we're going to repeat this process until we have all of the handles done. Now, I say all of the handles because I have multiple bags here, and some of the bags that I'm making today are for the guild. It's a charity project. They will give these bags to the local senior center, and they use them to bring their groceries home, but all kinds of uses for these. Some of these are quite large too, so it would even work for bringing a quilt to show and tell for the guild itself, for some of the large quilts that we get done. You could use a decorative thread, but I don't know that it would be worthwhile. Also, if you wanted to, you could top stitch this more than once if you were worried about that seam coming out. The plastic is slippery, so it slips underneath the foot very easily. And I think it might not be a terrible idea if you wanted to stitch that 2 or 3 times. So I may do that off camera. I have the handles done for this bag, but I just wanted to show you that these bags come in different sizes. This one's obviously much wider, but the process will be the same. And so they have really beautiful different animals on there. This was obviously bird seed, so it has a beautiful, I don't know if it's a cardinal or a redbird. This one was chicken seed, it has a beautiful chicken on it. But also they make all kinds of animal feed. This particular brand had all different kinds of chickens on the front of their bags, and they made really beautiful bags to repurpose. So I'm only going to be finishing one today on camera, but the next part of the process, we still have this tube. What we're going to do is sew a 1/4 of an inch from the edge and sew this bag sealed again, and then after we're finished, we're going to turn it inside out and come back and stitch on the reversed over top of where that seam was. So it's going to be creating a double seam there. So I'm going to show you that step. Using my 1/4 inch foot, I'm just going to seal the bottom of this bag closed. I don't really need to pin this or use the clips. So now what I'm going to do is turn the bag inside out, which should be a trick with this. But what we want is to be able to see where that seam was, because we want to top stitch over that about 5/8 of an inch away from the bottom. So we want to get that point out as nicely as we can. I wouldn't use anything too sharp here because this is plastic. And I wouldn't worry too much about the points, because after we sew this 5/8 inch seam, we're going to sew 2 triangles on the bottom to help make the bag square at the bottom of the bag. So I'm going to do a 5/8 inch seam. I have that marked on the sole plate of my machine. Now you could double stitch that if you wanted to. I think I will, but I'll edit that out so you don't have to watch. A lot of times what I like to do is make a terrible mistake so that you don't have to. In the last segment, I said that we sew on the diagonal here to make the little placket at the bottom so the bottom of the bag is flat. And that was totally incorrect. That's because I don't make bags that often. As soon as I opened up the bag and the bag didn't sit flat, then I realized I had done it wrong. So this is wrong. What we do want to do, we want to overlap the bag so this seam is on top of this seam. So in order to do that, we kind of have to fiddle so that we have a point that looks like that. And once we have that, I'm just going to measure about 2.5 or 3 inches and sew a straight line across. And that will give us the line that we're looking for. Now the further away that you measure from the point, the wider the bottom is going to be. So if you wanted a narrow flat bottom, you would do a smaller dimension. If you wanted a big square bottom, then you're going to go further from the tip. But we do want to remember what that is, because I then have to do the same thing on the other side. But I'm going to go ahead and sew the line on here, and then we'll do the other one. After you get those 2 box pleats done at the bottom, you see now that we have a square bottom. And the next step, what I did was I folded over the top edge one more time so we would have a double layer of the plastic there, because that's where the handle is going to get attached to. We're going to measure 3.5 inches over from each side to give us the placement of our handle. And I'm going to choose the prettiest handle for the front of the bag, because aesthetics are so important when recycling a bag out of a chicken feed container. I've already made my markings. I'm using the binding clips that we all seem to have. If you don't have binding clips, you could use paper clips, or you could also use clothespins. And then I'll go ahead and put this on from the back side. And I'm just going to sew this the best I can and tack this down in a square shape, and then maybe make an X over it, because that's where all the stress of the bag will be. So I'm going to go ahead and just sew a square over each of these handle placements, either from the inside or the outside. It doesn't really matter, whichever is easiest to get under the machine, but you can see how the bag is coming together. Well, I feel like we have recaptured some of the ingenuity of our ancestors. They, as I said, they used to use the feed sacks that were printed with the 1930s and 1940s fabric to make dresses and quilts for their family. And I just thought that it was a cute idea to recycle today's feed sack to make it a grocery bag or a tote bag for going to the quilt show, the quilt guild, anywhere that you wanted a nice sturdy bag. The bags that you get at the grocery store are cute. They have cute things printed on them, but they don't seem to last very long. 1 or 2 trips into the house and the handles break off. And this is a really sturdy plastic, and it's a great way to keep it out of the landfill. Now, I haven't gone to the extra step. What you can do on the side corners is fold it over and give yourself like 1/16 of an inch seam right down, stitch right down that. Basically, you're just top stitching the 2 layers together, and that will give you creases on all 4 sides. You could also do the same thing at the bottom on the front, back, and the 2 sides, and that would give you a much more well-defined box shape if that was important to you. I would really just be carrying stuff in mine. It's not going to be sitting around as a decoration, so I'm going to forgo that step, but you could easily do that. But you can see that you could hold quite a bit in these bags, and whether you use it as a utility bag for the storage room or the garage, or if you use it with these decorative ones to carry groceries into the house, or for any other purpose, I just thought it was a really great idea. So that was my recycling project for the year. I will tell you that I got this from my quilt guild, as I said, and the woman who was teaching it, they had several stations, and you'd go around from station to station learning these new tricks. And the woman who showed it said that she learned it from her sister, who had a farm, and they had a lot of the bags. And so they made like a assembly line and made several of them. But after I saw the idea, I thought, well, that would be cute as a video. And then the next time I saw her at the guild meeting, I asked her if she would like to come and do the video with me. And she had a look of terror in her eyes. And she quickly said no. She said I could do it, but she didn't want to come and do it. But I can really understand that terror, because I really didn't want to do the videos either. I remember when Patricia first asked me if I would do some teaching videos, I thought, ooh, no, I don't want to do that. That's not what I like. I know there are a lot of people who are quilt personalities online, and you know, they really eat it up. But all the first videos that we taught on Urban Elements, I didn't even have my face in it. I didn't even want my body parts in it. But sometimes my big belly would get in the view because I couldn't keep it out. There was no way to do it. So eventually, we started showing more than just hands and pointers, and here we are today. But I still understand the terror of the video, because I get nervous every single time I turn on the camera. You know, there's always that thing that we want to be accepted, or I don't know. I just, you know, want to be accepted, I guess, is the main thing. But so I understand the whole thought of it. But anyway, thanks for stopping in the studio today, learning how to recycle a usable bag out of your old feed sack bags, or any of your farming friends' old feed sack bags. And we'll look forward to seeing you again. As soon as I wrap this up, I'm going to reload the long arm machine. I have to get another quilt on there and get that started. I also have extra feed sacks, but I really felt like this would be more fun if you had somebody helping you do it, and make like an assembly line where one person could be turning them inside out as you're doing the sewing and whatnot. But I have a few more to do for the guild. They're for a charity project. So thanks for stopping by the studio today. I hope you had fun learning how to make a recycled bag, and we look forward to seeing you again next time.